I want to start with that comment that I just read, that comment that the president made to NBC News, saying that on the heels of hitting Carg Island, he might do it a few more times just for fun. And I wonder how that resonates with you as you think about what the end game is here and what you've learned from the administration about how they intend to prosecute this war to its conclusion.
Well, certainly the Cavalier, non-serious way in which President Trump, Secretary Hegseth, and others have talked about this war. We had Secretary Hegseth talking about no quarter, which is basically a military term for no survivors, kill everybody. I think that attitude has really undermined our ability to build support and move forward. It's far from the largest problem with this war. I mean, the largest problem is, what's the plan? What's the strategy? What are we trying to accomplish? What's the path to achieving it? And how do we deal with the costs that are mounting by the day, certainly in terms of deaths, but the economic impact you referenced globally? What's the path here? I know we want to degrade Iran's capability militarily, but how much? And then the real goal at the start of this seemed to be to fundamentally change Iran's calculus, to make them less hostile to us, to Israel, and to the region. And there seems to be no progress on that aspect of the plan. So this war is continuing. The cost is incredibly high. The president doesn't seem to have a plan. Meanwhile, they want to apparently try to convince America that this is some kind of fun video game that we're just playing, even as people are dying all across the region, and the global economy is suffering from this. So yeah, I wish they were a little more serious in the way they explained such an incredibly important action that they are taking.
Congressman, I want to get to what you know about the mission and the administration's sense of that mission. And we saw the news that the administration plans to send the 31st Marine Expeditionary Unit to the region to add to the number of service personnel who are there in the Middle East. Do you have a clear understanding of what those Marines are going to do? And as you watch that unfold, what does it tell you about the direction of this conflict?
Yeah, I have a clear understanding of what the options are. Look, we've been talking about this for a long time. There is no doubt that Iran is a major problem in the region, in the world, a threat to us, a threat to Israel. They support a variety of different violent extremist terrorist groups. How do you deal with that threat? So the Armed Services Committee for years now has been looking at options. I mean, what can you do? What's militarily on the table? And there's always been two big problems with the military option. One, the collateral damage. You hit Iran, it spreads, and that's certainly happened. It spread as far as anyone would have feared. Second problem is, can you really degrade them militarily to such a degree that it makes that cost worth the effort? And what we learned is really not, because the Iranian regime is dug in. They are very, very solid. Even as their leaders have been killed, they have a succession plan. There's 90 million people in Iran. They have a military. They do not appear inclined to simply collapse. So the conclusion was the military option wouldn't accomplish those objectives, would blow up the region, cause all manner of collateral damage and escalation, and wouldn't ultimately accomplish the objective. Trump decided to walk into that. And to think that, A, we can degrade their military capability to such a degree that it makes it worth it. But if they can just rebuild it, I mean, that's the main problem with that. And then second, he seemed to just sort of cross his fingers and say, well, gosh, if we hit them hard enough, they'll either collapse or they will simply be broken enough to do what we want. But there was never a clear path between all of this bombing and all of this destruction and getting to that change in behavior by Iran. That's the problem, and that's what we're experiencing right now. And I'd be interested to hear anyone who supports this war tell me what that path is at this point to fundamentally breaking and changing the regime. I don't see it.
Do you think that goal is accomplishable without putting boots on the ground? One of the experts we spoke to this week said there are two ways to go about this. You know, you can do a prolonged bombing campaign, but that doesn't give you as much input and impetus into what's actually happening on the ground and could take longer, or you can send in troops, but then again, you could get mired in another forever war.
Yeah, sorry, thank you. I didn't directly answer the most important part of that previous question. And so we've done this bombing campaign, and you want to try to do it on the cheap, and that's what a bombing campaign is. Now, we've seen even the bombing campaign spreads, escalates, causes violence across the region. But now you're up against that reality of, okay, you haven't achieved the objective. What about ground troops? And the problem with ground troops, again, is you're going to need a lot to dislodge this regime. There are talk about, more tactical tactical efforts, smaller numbers of troops, and this is what the Marines could do. One possibility is you seize Karj Island to try to cut off that economic lifeline for Iran. But could you seize it? Could you hold it? There's considerable questions about that. Maybe a small group of special forces can help spark a revolt within Iran. But again, there's no clear path to that.
But would you support that? Would you support U.S. troops going in a limited capacity like that?
Heavens no. No, sorry, I do not. Because I don't think it would be effective. And I think it, again, would be an escalation. It would cost more lives. And I don't think you'd be able to dislodge regime. And that's the problem. And let me be clear. If I woke up tomorrow and this Iranian regime was gone and we had an Iran that was working for the Iranian people and stopped all of the terrible stuff they were doing, I would be very, very happy. But the problem is there's no direct path to doing that. And the cost of what Donald Trump has done without thinking that through, without having a plan to actually achieve the objective. So now you can't achieve the objective, and you've caused an enormous amount of casualties, disruption, and escalation, not just in Iran, but across the region and across the world. So that's the problem I have with this approach.
I want to ask you about the path forward here for lawmakers like yourself who oppose this military action. So we saw that vote on the War Powers Resolution fail in both houses last week. How do you pick up the pieces from that? What does opposition to this war look like going forward, both in the House and the Senate, as you see it?
Yeah, well, certainly we need to speak out against it. And for those who are against the war, give them a voice, give them an argument for why to do it. But I think from a practical standpoint, my goal is to stop the war because I think it's bad. I think it's bad policy. It's escalation. It's incredibly costly. It's devastating to our economy. We've seen gas prices go up, 50 cents to a dollar. It's going to cause the affordability crisis to only get worse in this country. And I think the most sensible path to that is try to encourage the Trump administration and the supporters of this war to, however implausibly, be able to declare victory and stop. Okay, try to begin to rebuild pieces. That, I think, is a plausible argument for the Trump administration. And then you hear Trump saying, let's bomb them for fun. You hear Hegseth saying no quarter. You hear Trump saying they're willing to negotiate, but I'm not really in the mood. All of that is deep cause for concern. But the plan is, okay, declare victory and stop. If that can stop the war, then I'm more than willing to make that argument.
Do you have any kind of read on the condition of the new leader of Iran? Because we have this statement from Iran's foreign minister saying Moshtaba Khamenei is in good health and fully managing the situation, but we still haven't seen him. What is your perspective, and what are you hearing about whether he is, in fact, even a player at this point?
I have no idea. Nobody knows. All right. So there is no answer to that question. I think the thing is, let's not get too excited about what the answer is to that one way or the other. Even if he is, as some host told me the other day, he's in a coma and he's missing a limb. How he knows that, I have no idea. But let's say that the guy's completely incapacitated and he dies in a week. The statement that was put out, if it wasn't put out by him, it was put out by the Iranian regime. It was put out by the people who are in charge of Iran. So the belligerence in that statement, the complete lack of any sort of acquiescence, as Trump had hoped, shows that whether this guy's alive or not, the people who are running Iran are no closer to having a reasonable government there than they were at the start of this war. Yeah. Arguably, they're further away and even more dug in.
Last question I have is just about money. And before this war began, you had a Pentagon asking for an extremely large budget, $1.5 trillion, which I think will astonish a lot of people. I imagine some of your constituents as well. Is this administration going to get that from Congress? What's your assessment of the appetite to increase the defense budget to that size and scale?
Yeah, that's a 50% increase in the defense budget. And by the way, that doesn't include the supplemental that they're talking about asking for to help cover the cost of this war, which is going to be in the tens of billions of dollars. No, that's not realistic. And look, we have a $38 trillion debt. And it's very frustrating to me that everyone talks about that. And then, oh my gosh, the Republicans, when they came riding into majority in Congress and President Trump got elected, this was a major issue. And then they voted for the reconciliation bill to add $4 trillion to the debt by massively cutting taxes. You're going to massively cut taxes, and then you're going to start a war and ask for a 50% increase in the defense budget? I mean, I don't think we need to do that, even if we hadn't cut those taxes. But my God, how do you stand up in front of the American people and say, we need a $1.5 trillion defense budget? We had to go to this war and spend these $10 billion, but we're not going to pay for it. we're going to cut taxes. We're going to drive the debt through the ceiling. I'm a little bit speechless in terms of how do you justify that from any sort of economic standpoint. I wouldn't have cut the taxes, and I wouldn't be going to war and massively increasing the defense budget. But to try to do both is just insane in my view.